Hello, and welcome to Look Down There, the show where we talk about all the things we don't talk about. I'm your host, Michelle Lamore. Today, my guest is an amazing artist, singer, songwriter, and actress. You may have seen her on season 18 of The Voice, where she worked with team legend Blake and Kelly. Her songs Woman and Room to Grow speak to her growth into womanhood as she lives with alopecia. She plans to educate the world on the psychosocial response to alopecia and encourages her audience to live authentically and to thrive in adversity. Here she is, the voice, the goddess, Cedrice.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Michelle.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. I remember the first time I saw you, and that was really one of our only interactions, maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. Who knows? Time is an illusion at this point. But I remember seeing you, and I was like, I know, I know. I have to ask her if she has alopecia because I have alopecia, and I had just come out and revealed my secret to the public probably about a year before I met you. So I was living in this new skin and this new body where I didn't experience the shame that I was carrying and this burden around alopecia. So I had to reach out to you because I was like, I know, I get it.
Yeah, it was so cool to meet you too because that was actually one of the first times that I'd been to Black Rabbit Rose in LA. And I feel, and it's funny that you say like this new body and like coming in, saying, hello world, this is me, because I feel like I'm just a totally different person than I was 2 years ago. I feel like it's a new body that I'm becoming. And then also me growing into like my womanhood, I feel like it's just a whole new transformation. And to be able to embrace it is just, it feels a lot better than denying it. So
Oh my God.
it's
Yeah.
really, really great to meet other people who have alopecia and who are just kind of living freely in their image.
Yeah, and I hadn't really, I was thinking about talking to you today, and I was like, you know what? I don't really know that I've met very many people with alopecia. And so it's such a treat to talk to someone who like gets it and has been through it, and you, like me, are in this really image-based industry. And so like when did you get diagnosed with alopecia? When did this come into your life?
Yeah, I was diagnosed at 10 years old, and it came out very quickly. I didn't notice it actually before I was diagnosed, but everyone at my school noticed. I had my hair in a ponytail, but then there's like that section right at the bottom that just
Yeah.
was completely gone, and I had no idea. And right after, right after I went to the doctors and got diagnosed, my hair was like, it came out maybe months later. But what's very interesting is that I got strep throat right before I was diagnosed with alopecia. And then I was injected with, I don't know how many milligrams, but I had 2 shots of penicillin. And then alopecia hit. My hair fell out.
Yeah.
And then it grew
Yeah,
back.
so that triggered your autoimmune response probably.
Right. And some people might be like, maybe that caused it, but I think the word triggered is a thing, was the thing that happened. So when I was, I think, 16 years old, it grew back for 2 months without any treatment. I've never gone through any treatment, and it was about here. And I'm Black and Asian, so my hair is just like kind of all over the place. But I had been wearing like long straight wigs for so long, my hair grew back, and I was just kind of wearing like my afro out and not really having any sense of how to work it. I just put some water in it, which is not good for Black girl hair. Like just put water in it, and it's just dry. It didn't make sense. And then it fell out again. And so now I'm 29 and I've had it since I was 10 years old.
Yeah. I think I was diagnosed around 6. And like you, I didn't know. I didn't really have any idea what was happening. I didn't have any self-image. I wasn't self-conscious. I was just running around and being a kid, right? But I knew that I was going in for a lot of blood work. I didn't really know why. And then it was just like, okay, you have alopecia. And so, I never lost all of it, but I might as well have, through junior high, I had little tiny patches of hair that I tried very hard. I thought I was fooling everybody, Cedrice. I would take my 3 little hairs and try to cover this huge spot on my head. It was just like the worst comb over there ever was, probably. But yeah, I mean, it's such a release to just live in your body.
Yeah.
And so when did you let go of your wigs?
I was 24 years old.
Okay.
And I had kind of like you, actually, I love how you styled your hair. So
Thanks. I just got it cut. My first cut.
it's so interesting. So when my hair fell out, grew back, and then fell out again, it still grew. If I just left it alone, it grew in a mohawk.
Yes. Yeah,
It,
that's what mine is. Yeah.
That's so interesting because it looks so good on you. I feel like everyone who tries to shave their head like halfway and then keep the other half, the look that you have is the look they're going for.
Right. You know what? Alopecia is very stylish.
It is.
Like you had an undercut before anybody even knew what an undercut was.
Thank you. So
Right.
actually, I was coloring my eyebrows at 12 years old before people were coloring their eyebrows, and I would make them a little bit thicker because back in the early 2000s, it was like the thinner eyebrows that were in, and everyone was making fun of me because I was just ahead of the time. And then finally, when college hit, everyone was like darkening their eyebrows, and now we all get them tattooed or we have makeup and stuff. So yes, alopecia can be very stylish.
Right? Yes. I always remember, like, when I was a kid, I would see other people walking around, like, with shaved head or shaved eyebrows. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that? It's like my whole life was just chasing hair and just trying to get hair. And, I gave up that fight a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
24 years old was when I let go of the wig, but I moved to headscarves. When did you wear wigs?
So, I have a strange relationship with wigs. When I was younger, and doing all the blood tests and all that, I was also getting fitted for wigs. And I wore a wig to my first day of like first grade or something. And we were playing Duck, Duck, Goose. And I was running and my wig fell off, and it was a very traumatic experience, and everyone was laughing at me. And I came home and my hair was askew and I was crying. I came off the school bus and I told my mom, who probably spent hundreds of dollars on this wig, I pulled it off and I said, I'm never wearing this again. I'm never doing it again. And that was a really formative moment for me. And where like where you want to encourage that authenticity in your audience, I feel that same way about my audience. And that is the moment that I can point to where it was like, I'm not lying. I can't lie. I can't be somebody I'm not.
Yeah.
And that's what that moment taught me. And then I found myself in burlesque, right? And everyone wears wigs in burlesque. And but I couldn't. I was like, I can't, I can't get into it. And when I started burlesque, my hair kind of looked like this. Actually, it was short and edgy looking. And that's just how I performed because I had this need for honesty, right? And then, at some point, like my hair grew in, and it was like, I felt like a normal girl.
Yeah.
It was like the dream that I always wanted was to wake up and have a full head of hair. And then it came out a lot. And then I started wearing wigs and hiding that. And then finally, I think it must have been 3 years ago. So I was 38 where I made the decision, and I walked into my stylist and I said, you know what, today is the day. Like we gotta do it. And she was really gentle with me and she cut it down really short. And I kind of had this cheetah pattern of spots all over my head. And I was just like, oh, like I'm fucking free, you know, like let's do this. And I so admire what you're doing, and I love that you're a voice for this cause. And something I wonder if you've heard this. Well, it's just hair.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
That's what I think is really, and I need to do more research on it too. But yeah, it is just hair. It should just be hair. It should just be an accessory, just some earrings. But it feels like an arm or a leg. It feels like a limb because think about it, like people even change their wardrobe based on the color of their hair. And like if you and then your look is very edgy. You probably dress a certain way, not just colors, but you probably dress a certain way because it's more appealing to, the symmetrics of your body, it just looks different. And that gets translated into your identity and how you're expressing yourself. And then if you're an artist like us, it's like, that's a big deal. And then also, I mean, just recently, politically, and then also when you go back into like, the history of Black women's hair, and even to now, it's like if it was just hair, then why did they have to cover it up before, or why do they have to press and perm it? If it's just hair, then y'all shouldn't be offended by it at all. So it definitely is like one of those like eye rolling moments, but you kind of have to be, well, I don't know, I try to be as patient as possible because I do recognize people come from a place of just not knowing, not really having had that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I understand the sentiment,
Yeah.
but when you're going through it and you're just seeing clumps of hair in the sink and in your hand and on your pillowcase, it's just very stressful. And hey, ironically, stress amps up alopecia. So it's just like,
Exactly.
okay, so how, like, what am I supposed to do here?
Right.
Um,
And having it at 6 years old or 10 years old, and then dealing with it in a different way at 30 years old is like, it's like reading, it's not like, but it's very similar to the mentality that happens when you're reading a book at 10 years old, and then you read that same book again at 30 years old. You have a totally different perspective. And with our life, we have a totally different perspective of who we want to represent ourselves to be. So it changes, our hairstyle and how we see ourselves and how we want to represent. It changes, and it's a big deal.
yeah. Do you
Yeah.
feel grateful for your experience with alopecia?
I do, because I don't know who I would have been without it. I mean, even when I was wearing wigs, I was like talking a different way, and I was confused of where I fit in. And I remember when I was 18, I was thinking to myself, I am trying to dress like all these other people that look nothing like me. And I've learned how to be more comfortable with my body and be more comfortable showing that in front of people now than ever before. And that's a really empowering thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know who I would have been if I had it a little easier. And I think what you were saying earlier, you don't know if you've really met a lot of people with alopecia. It affects like 2% of the population, which is actually a pretty significant amount, but we all have it at different levels. So some people may just have that spot, or like you, or like me, or universalist. And so it wasn't until I was on The Voice that I started meeting a lot of people who have alopecia. And it's really cool to see how people have embraced it. But part of being on the other side of this, where I'm like, I've had it for years and I feel better now, is that I don't remember what it was like feeling day to day, I don't remember what it was like exactly to be 10 years old, 12 years old, 16 years old, dealing with people always, dealing with caring what people said about my looks, and that's the gap that I kind of want to fill now at this point in my life. I want to remember that and be able to communicate to the kids that are younger than us who maybe want to be a dancer or want to be a singer or performer, but they feel like I don't see other people with alopecia in that field. So then you think, like, even for me as an actress, I'm like, I'm either the extraterrestrial, character, or I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't see a lot of bald women represented in just, you know, in the wide variety of like that other characters are being shown. So, and I want to be able to show that for myself and then for people who are younger than us. So, I think that's really important too.
Yeah, you said something that made me think of this, my first moment on stage. I came to dance late. I started dancing when I was 15. I was a super shy kid. Even though I developed a great personality, I did have friends. I was also super self-conscious because, hair. So my first time on stage, I think I was 15 in a dance recital. And it was such a big moment for me because I felt like I could show people that I have this talent, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, look at that poor girl, or what's wrong with her, or let's laugh at her, or whatever. But it was like, look at what I can do. Did you have that kind of experience with singing and acting? And
That's a good question. I noticed, and I think I'm more empathic to it now, or like more sensitive to it now. Just the other day, I was in Target, and these little girls were like, "Daddy, she's so pretty, and she's bald. She's bald, and she's beautiful." Yeah, and like it's all in the background. It's so adorable, and I think that when I was growing up, I wanted so badly for people just not to notice. And that's why I wore the wig, so I could just be like, But I hadn't become a singer yet. I hadn't really like delved into all my talents. And now that I'm a singer, I recognize that before I open my mouth to sing, before anyone knows I sing, they look at me and they see the image first, and because I've grown into it and I feel empowered in my look, people respond the way that I feel inside. And then when I sing, I'm like, and I got that. That's kind of how I feel. It's kind of a confidence booster because it's something that I've worked on. And this wasn't a choice. But I just had to figure out how to work with it. And so that, I think, that was an interesting dynamic because I think it still is an interesting dynamic that it's not, even though I dress the way I do or I walk the way I do or represent myself in a certain way, I'm like trying to build my arsenal of talents, of skill. Still kind of, I'm not saying don't notice me, but I'm still like, oh, but I have so much more than this. And that
yeah,
almost makes me want to like champion the more of the narrative of like, whatever your adversity is, you have so much more, you know?
yeah. Like your alopecia or your adversity is not who you are. It's not your identity. It's part of your story. It's
Yeah.
part of your message. I think people like us, using this to be an advocate for people and be like, we're all going through something. What we're going through physically manifests, right? So people can tell right away, like, oh, something's off, right?
Yeah.
But we can pass people down the street and we can make judgments and think, oh, this person is perfect, or I wish I was that person. But they're going through stuff. We just can't see it,
Yeah.
right? So we just have to build in that compassion. And I feel like that's been one of the greatest lessons that I've learned in struggling with alopecia. What do you feel is one of your biggest lessons that you've learned?
Um, That actually, what you just said was a really good one. And I was just talking to a girlfriend of mine, Killian. She has alopecia too. I met her because she was a viewer of The Voice, and we just got to talking. And she was just kind of explaining that same thing. She was like, I just have more compassion for other people because I know what I've gone through and I know how I've hidden it. And so I've just been more compassionate to other people. And I think that I would say the same thing. Like I said, I don't know who I would have been. I don't know if I would have been as patient as I am, or as understanding or compassionate. I still have more work to do for sure, but I'm just a lot more inclined to be like, hold on, other than being critical. I think that kind of just comes with this condition, if you're open to it. I think compassion, I would have to agree with you on that one.
Yeah, yeah, and just not judging other people, but most of all, not judging yourself. And you're talking about being on stage versus being off stage. And for me, I felt really strong and powerful on stage all the time. This is where I am. Off stage, I was that little girl in the Duck Duck Goose Game. Off stage, I was like, don't look at me. I would do everything I could to not be seen off stage. I just felt so uncomfortable and felt like people are going to find out. They're going to find out my secret. So I like held this very heavy thing for a long time. And, did you feel a difference versus being on stage or off stage in that way of your confidence and self-esteem?
So when I was 24, it was the time that I stopped wearing a wig, but it was also the same year that I became a singer professionally. So I was always singing in my living room and in my kitchen and whatnot, but I wasn't singing for people. And 24 years old was when I was in college. I met some musicians, and that was what I wanted to do with my life, so I did it. There are a few pictures out there with me wearing a wig, but it was like, I could even tell I was like holding back, and the way I move is just so sensual and open, and I'm, doing it, I'm trying to channel my inner burlesque dancer inside of me. So one day I had a gig where I had a headscarf. And I think my journey kind of correlates with also with me being half black as well, because I don't have a good relationship with my father. And back when I was 18, I would wear headscarves, and people would say, "Oh, oh my God, you look like an African queen." But I did not take that as a compliment. Because me and my dad's relationship was not good. I just associated everybody who looked like him to be like him, and I was like, I don't want any association with that. So that was a really big identity issue on its own. But as I was singing R&B and soul. I can't stray very far away from my from my roots. So I'm singing on stage, and one day I wear a headscarf, and this is many years later, after 18, 24 years old. And I had it kind of like up, and then I had like one kind of hanging here, like a little ponytail. And I noticed it was orange, and it really worked with my skin complexion and my outfit. And people just kept complimenting me, saying, "Wow, it looks really great. I like this look on you." And so I just kind of kept doing it. And with that, I think that paired with learning how to be comfortable on stage and not care if the audience. So what would happen is I would look out on the audience's faces, and they would just be really stoic. But then after every song, they'd be like. So throughout the entire 5 minutes of the song and the musician's solos, they're just like. And then sometimes, they're just doing this, like talking to other people. And my ego was so big. I was like, they're talking about me. They hate me, and then after every song, they're just like happy. So I had to figure out a way to be comfortable with not caring if they liked me or not. And that brought my attention back to me and building confidence in myself and building that tough skin. And then also with my hair, not being like, I'm a performer. They want to escape from their reality. They want to just sit back and just receive. So I'm the experience. And so wearing without the wig, wearing my style, and then eventually taking it off, that made it even more exhilarating to watch, I think, for people too, because it just looks different. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, it's kind of like an alien. Like you just want to keep looking. And I'm like, that is a compliment to me. you know? People identify with you in a different way. It's almost like being an art piece that you can just interpret, So I thought that was really cool, and that's kind of how I dealt with both of those aspects.
Well, they're seeing something in you that they want to see in themselves.
Yeah.
It's an aspirational thing. And I think my other biggest lesson that I've learned is that vulnerability is strength. And if you can bring people into your world and preach that message, vulnerability is so scary, but look at you, like you're doing it, you're being vulnerable, you're exposed, you have nothing to hide, right? You're not hiding behind wigs or scarves or whatever. And if you do choose to wear those, maybe you can view them in a way that's not like you're hiding, but more like this is something fun, like this is, like you said, a pair of earrings, this is an accessory. Yeah.
Yeah, you're choosing, you have the choice now. Like you said, you're not hiding from it. I tried
Yeah.
wearing a wig once. I went to a farmer's market here in LA and I was like, oh, let me just wear it because it was really cold. And I was like, I don't want to wear a hat with this outfit. So I put the wig on and I was in the car. I was like, oh, I'm done with this. I could not last 20 minutes. But I did a film the other day, or a couple weeks ago, and I had a wig, and it was just fun. Like you said, it's part of an experience, and I think if you
Right.
look at it
The
that way,
character.
it could be really empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a
Yeah.
question.
Yes.
So, so between you being on stage and being off stage, where did the transition happen where you felt confident on both stages?
Yeah, when I came out, so I did a big public reveal. I made a video and I put it out and I took my wig off and came clean. And honestly, when I did that, I thought I was going to lose all of my jobs because the venues that I work for, they're selling sexy, and I was like, there's no way they're going to go for this. I was at a really good point in my career, really steady work, which as an artist is, a dream. And so before I came out, I went to all the venues and I said, you know what, this is what's going on with me. I am making this announcement because I can't hold this burden anymore. And they were so supportive. And, the first time that I performed without a wig, like as myself, was actually in LA at a show called Lucha Vavoom. Do you know that show?
Mm-mm, I don't.
It's at the Mayan Theater downtown. It's like a big burlesque and Mexican wrestling show. It's wild. And so there's like 2,000 people there, and I'm premiering this brand new act and this brand new look. And holy shit. Like I was just, after that moment, I was like a changed woman. And that was 3 years ago. And I've just been like moving in that direction ever since, and really feeling so confident off stage, which has been such a great thing. Like, oh, like the world is a stage, right? Like, yes,
Yeah.
yes, right. So that is something that is such a welcome change, and kind of like you were saying when you were talking about your ego, like they're talking about me, they hate me, blah blah blah. I would feel that way as well. Like every time I went on stage and made the choice to be myself and present as myself, I would look at the other girls in the dressing room who had big pinup hair and like perfectly coiffed everything, and I was like, oh, they're gonna hate me, they hate me, they hate me, and then I'm like, oh, they don't hate me, they like me, like I'd perform at No Vacancy or Black Rabbit and be like, these people, they are not gonna get it, but then like that was me judging, right? Like that was me putting that on them and not really giving them a chance or myself a chance in that moment. So it just came with repetition, I think.
And what's funny about that too is that if you saw a woman who looked like you doing what you do on stage, you'd be like, whoa, that's different. Yeah, that's cool. So we're so critical of ourselves for like no reason. It's just the ego. And yeah, that's really magical. And I can feel it. I got goosebumps when you were telling me about what was it? Mexican wrestling.
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah, lucha boom. It's wild.
Yeah, I feel like that was a big deal. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, it was a big moment. So, how do you like want to move forward in the future, and how like where do you see yourself going with your message of living authentically and mixing that with your art?
Yeah, I think I've been, it kind of ties in, how do I say this? Sorry, there's so many thoughts in my mind. Well, one thing for sure, in my bio, I sent you, I was talking about the psychosocial response. And part of me being on this side where I'm comfortable with myself and I just kind of live my life, not thinking, oh my gosh, I'm bald and people are going to look at me a certain way. I also forget how I felt and the thoughts I had when I was 10 years old. And I really want to bridge the gap between me and the people, or like where I'm at and then the people who are still figuring it out, and also their families, because even to this day, my family just doesn't talk about it. And I think it's just an effort to make me feel, well, I think it's not so much of a deliberate effort, but I think my family just doesn't see me any different than they did when I was 5 years old, 7 years old. I'm just their sister or their daughter. But when I was growing up, I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. And my family just, and the way they responded was they didn't respond, and when I was teased very, like, to the point where I just was not going to my performing arts school anymore, that's when my mom had to come to the school and talk to the people. But even after that, I still didn't remain going to that performing arts school, which kind of hindered my path in music. And we were really excelling back in the 90s. We were doing, we were shooting music videos and we were working on the new Macs and, editing movies and audio engineering back when I was 9 years old and 10 years old, So that really kind of put a halt on my creative process. And I think if that happened to me, I'm sure that there are some 16-year-olds, 12-year-olds who are dealing with the social aspect of it, and then also figuring not, just kind of staying away from what they're passionate about and kind of steering away from what they could be passionate about. And so I definitely want to develop a program with some dermatologists and also people like you and me who are talking about that. Like, how do you respond to someone who is bald or who has alopecia areata? And I mean, because a lot of the time, not anymore now that I've been on The Voice, just more people recognize me from the show. So they're like, oh, yeah. But before I was on The Voice, people were like, do you have cancer? And I have been able to figure out ways to respond to that instead of getting like, the fuck are you talking about? You know what I mean?
Can you imagine going up to somebody and asking them if they have cancer? Like, what?
And again, and if I did, like, that doesn't, I don't want to fucking talk about it. You know what I mean? So it should,
Yeah.
and that's what I mean. And that's what you were saying also too. I think just people just don't know how to respond. And I think too, because there's no cure, there's treatment. It's seen as kind of like you said, just hair. It's just a cosmetic disorder, or yeah. So I think there's definitely a market to develop a response to people like us, and then also just showcase more people like us who are really living in freedom and in our bodies, and just showing people who we are and being okay with that and figuring out how to bridge the gap from one stage to the next, and building that confidence in ourselves, because I think that will take us so much further. And we realize that it's not, even though we're performers, I think you would agree with me, like, there's not just one type of beauty, and I don't do this because I think that I'm beautiful. Like, there's I was doing it before I thought I was beautiful. You know what I mean? So there's something obviously that's beyond alopecia, and I think I want to help bring families and kids and men too who have alopecia just some empowerment to move forward with their journey.
Yeah, we need to develop that support, and also if you can do that through art. I've learned the greatest lessons in life through art and what I do, and so I am very grateful to have alopecia and to have learned these lessons and to develop compassion and acceptance for myself and for others.
Yeah, yeah, that's where it all starts.
And I will ask you one final question.
Yeah.
Do people always ask you to touch your head?
Um, okay, so twice. Once at Black Rabbit Rose, and after I was like, yeah, I stopped and I was like, I'm never fucking doing that shit again. Why am I letting that person touch my head? First off, this is sacred. Like, I need to not. Then the second person who asked me to touch my head was James Blake. Oh, wait, is that James? Oh my gosh, why am I forgetting his name? James Taylor?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I was
That's
like,
surprising.
I was like, you can touch my head.
Yeah, yeah,
And then he was just so, he was like, wow, your head is so beautiful. Can I feel your hair? Like your, I was like, yeah, sure. And then he took off his hat and he said, well, you want to touch my head too? And it was just so adorable and so like non-threatening and just not malicious at all, or a sense of like, I don't know, there wasn't any, anything to it. But ever since I'm telling you, I don't know what it was about being on a show, but ever since being on the show, a lot of people recognize me, and then a lot of people who don't recognize me, they come up to me, and it's almost like they keep their distance, but they're like, wow, it's an interesting response. But I think if someone were to ask me again, I would definitely say no,
yeah.
absolutely not.
Yeah, I think that was one of the most surprising things for me when I was going out. And it happened to me a lot. A lot. People would ask to touch my head. And I was like, this is so bizarre.
Isn't it a bizarre
So
request?
bizarre. And I was like, okay, like I said okay. And then I'm like, just like you, like, why am
Yeah.
I saying okay? And then, I mean, of course, with COVID, no one's touching me anywhere. But this one time, I was in New York performing, and this one time, this guy asked if he could touch my head, and I was like, I guess so. And then he like licked it, and I was like, oh no,
I don't understand it.
no.
It had the most inappropriate message on some, I don't know what it is. It was like, I want to ejaculate on your head. I was like, what is going on? This is not okay. I feel, what's that word? Violated.
Yeah, yeah, it's not okay. No.
Yeah, it's not okay, people.
Yeah.
Don't ask.
But you know what? I like to touch my head, and it took me a long time to do that, and now I just love it.
Yeah. You know what I do? I do wish that I could feel again is like, I don't know if you remember, but when I had a lot of hair, I had a lot, like, do you know what a heat miser is? I'm Mr. Heat
Yeah.
Miser. So I had like a big afro. And anytime I would do this after I take my ponytail off, oh, it felt so good. But now because I shave my head every 2 days, it doesn't feel like anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just kind of like sandpaper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Cedrice, you have so much wonderful stuff going on. How can people keep up with you and stay in touch?
Yeah, so right now I am on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and all that good stuff. I'm taking a small hiatus, but you can find me on YouTube. Look up Miss Cedrice, MS Cedrice, and that's Cedric with an E at the end. I always tell everybody that. They're like, oh, that makes more sense. So you can find me on YouTube, and then also at cedricemusic.com.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for doing this, and it has been such a joy to talk to you and just really healing, and I'm so happy to know you.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you so much for reaching out. This is really, really refreshing for me too.
Good. Thank you. Okay, everybody, now it's time for you to spread your legs and spread the love. Go ahead and follow Cedrice and follow us here at I Look Down There or at Michelle Lamore. And a friendly reminder to grab a mirror and look down there. Until next time.